Hi, I'm Red. I've lived here my whole life, and most people think that life here is pretty uneventful, but I'd like to tell you a story of just how untrue that is. Have you ever heard the story of the three little pigs?
Yeah.
And this story tells us that a big, mean, hungry old wolf blows down their houses and gobbles them up, right?
Yeah.
I can assure you that's not what really happened. Have you guys ever seen a wolf who can blow down a house? No. Even if it were made of straw, that would be nearly impossible. But there is something that wolves and most other animals can do. Did you know that wolves can sense earthquakes before they strike? There are these things called seismic waves that travel through the earth and arrive before the ground starts shaking. So learning about this and a few other things will help for safe living. But before I get started, I'm going to need your help. Since we hopefully won't have a real earthquake, we need to find a way to let the wolf know that a quake might be coming. How could we do that? It has to be something you could hear. Oh, I've got it. What if you guys all hummed with me? Ooh, stop. Sorry, that was a little disorganized, and seismic waves are pretty organized. But I think I have somebody backstage who could help. Miss Conductor. Miss Conductor? Oh, sorry. So, as the conductor raises her hands, get ready to start humming. And then when her hands move back and forth, you should start and continue humming until her arms cross. Then you should be completely silent. So let's try it. Oh goodness, that was perfect. So keep your eyes and ears open for the conductor throughout the story. Oh, and one last thing. You guys might have to be the pigs' houses. So if you see a pig coming off stage and you want to help them, I need you to raise your hand really high, sit up really straight, and be very quiet, because they will only pick the quietest. So do you want to try it? All right, go ahead. Wow. They're going to have a really hard time choosing. Perfect, so hands down. All right, now are you guys ready to get started? Once upon a time, there were three little pigs who lived with their mother on a farm in southeast Missouri. And as much as they loved their home and their mother, they wanted to venture out on their own. Starlight took their mother's hand. We're all ready to live on our own. The others agreed, and the mother cried and cried, but finally agreed with them. So they packed all their bags, kissed their mother's cheek, and split up. Leaving the mother all alone for the first time in years. So at this time, the wolf was just coming home from 4 very long years at Acme University. And he was very ready to move back in with his parents. But as he got to the steps, his parents met him at the door. They said, "You've graduated college, and it's time for you to move out on your own." And with that, they gave him a friendly shove and helped by packing the rest of his things. They knew he'd make it on his own. So the wolf went out and managed to build a nice little den in the side of a hill. However, he was a horrible hunter. It was was his worst class in college. After a few days, he was so hungry that he took to eating leaves. Yuck. But that's when he got his new neighbor. Starlight was an environmentalist. She believed that the things she ate, the places she lived, and the things she did should not harm her surroundings. It took her a while before she found the perfect place to build a home. Being as close to nature as she was, she decided her home should blend into the environment. Luckily, she found a nice spot in the middle of a wheat field, and she burrowed a nice, big mud hole. She thought this was the perfect location because making the walls out of straw was not just eco-friendly, but very convenient. It was a cold, quiet night in mid-December, and the pig and wolf had settled down for a good night's sleep. The wolf woke up suddenly a little after 2 a.m. He had never felt this before. He was so scared he ran right outside of his house. Outside, he was met by angry, squawking birds and other animals running about. Then the ground began to shake, rattle, and roll. All around him, trees shook back and forth, some toppling over. Suddenly, great bursts of sand and water shot out of the ground, and the wolf found himself swimming in several feet of water. Finally, after what seemed like forever, but was about 3 minutes, the ground stopped shaking. Now, the wolf didn't really know how far he had ran or swam, but suddenly he found himself outside of Starlight's house. Like any wolf would, he went inside to see if he could dig anything up. Unfortunately, he found that a big bookshelf had fallen over. And well, all I can say is, the wolf had enough pork chops to last a whole month. Will our straw house please come out and take a bow? No bow? When the wolf got home, he found that his house was in shambles and thanked his lucky stars he had gotten out of the house in time. As he put his house back together, he remembered poor little Starlight and decided he should screw all of his big furniture and appliances to the walls. Meanwhile, at another location by the river, the second little pig, Tamantha the tool woman Taylor, was picking out a site for her new home. Tamantha loved to watch home improvement shows on TV and thought it might be fun to be a weekend carpenter. So Tamantha decided to build her house out of wood. As you can see, she maybe should have gone to the library and checked out a book on how to build a house, but instead she got her advice from watching Bob the Builder. But the house really does have a lot of character. She built her home at the edge of the Mississippi River. It was so close, in fact, that she could stick a fishing pole out the window and catch fish for dinner. 2 months later, just enough time passed that people had stopped thinking about the big earthquake. Life had pretty much returned back to normal when the wolf felt a very familiar feeling. The wolf finally understood what was happening, so instead of running out of the house, he got under his table and held on for dear life. This time, the earthquake was even stronger and more violent than the last one. The wolf was very glad he had hidden under the table because the shaking collapsed part of his house. He's a very good digger, as most canines are, and was able to dig himself out of the burrow. Back at Tamantha's house, things didn't go quite as well. Tamantha hadn't known that Starlight had been crushed by a bookshelf, so she didn't attach all of her heavy furniture and appliances to the walls. Luckily, she stayed in bed during the earthquake and put a pillow over her head. This protected her from most of the falling debris. Unfortunately, she built her home right next to the river on sandy soil. The shaking of the earthquakes caused the riverbanks to collapse, the house to disappear, never to be seen again. And now, round of applause for our second house. If you guys take a bow? No? No bow? A couple of days later, the wolf was out fishing so he could have a fish fry. Unfortunately, the water was still churning up from the big earthquake. He was having trouble catching anything besides old shoes, logs, and other junk. He was just about to give up when he caught a pork chop, and then a pork loin, and then a Boston butt. So instead of having a fish fry, he had a barbecue for all of his neighbors. The third little pig, Olive Christine DiCaprio, or OCD as we call her, was high-strung and wound really tight and had to have everything in its proper place. She even had a personal stylist to make sure she always looked perfect. Now, OCD had been traveling on the river during the earthquake. So she told her friends and family about how the river turned to rapids, swamped the boats, and almost capsized. It was pretty dark. She didn't realize that during the earthquake, the Mississippi River actually ran backwards and deposited her right back down where the trip began. No one ever knew what happened to Starlight or Tamantha, but OCD wasn't taking any chances. So when she built her house, she built it out of bricks, because she thought nothing could possibly knock over a brick house. And as you can see, all the bricks in her house had to line up perfectly. People would come from miles and miles just to see how it was constructed. Many awards for design and construction were even given to OCD. The home was even featured in Farm and Home Quarterly. Following this earthquake, many small quakes came every couple of weeks. Thankfully, none of these were very large. People were still pretty nervous, but for the most part, things got back to normal. This time, the wolf was already outside. So he got on the ground and put his paws over his head. Meanwhile, at OCD's house, the shaking was very strong. She noticed that the mortar holding the bricks together was starting to crack. The more the earth shook, the more the walls cracked until bricks began falling. Finally, one wall completely collapsed. Olive had decided to hide under a table just in case a picture fell. Luckily, she made a great choice and it saved her life. Unluckily, she didn't grab a book or anything else sturdy to cover herself. So when she exited the home, a brick hit her right in the head. It wasn't fatal, but it left her with a nice case of amnesia. Unfortunately enough, she met a stranger and thought it would be okay to help him find a lost puppy. All I can say is you should never go off with strangers. Third house, would you like to come out? Bow, no, bow, no. until now, the story you've heard is pretty similar to the folklore, right? But as this tale unfolds, you can see that the wolf is caught in a pretty raw deal, becoming this mean, evil monster of the story, when all he did was take advantage of the circumstance. But now it's time to introduce you guys to their long-lost cousin, Shaken Bacon. Shaken Bacon was a scientist. And as a scientist, she was really interested in exploring and investigating the world around her. As a part of her investigation of what happened to the 3 little pigs, she reviewed the rubble from each of the houses. Now, Shaken Bacon decided to use what she had learned from her cousin's mistakes to help her build the safest house possible. She looked at where they were built and how the items in the room interacted with the environment, what worked and what didn't. Here's a few examples of what she learned. See how the straw, which is bendable and light, wasn't a problem, but none of the heavy furniture could be secured to the wall. It fell over, causing major injury to Starlight. Not having a solid floor didn't help either. Over at Tamantha's house, some of the structure that was secured with metal straps stayed together, but the places that weren't strapped broke apart. Plus, the big problem was it was built right next to the river. The sandy soil gave way and sank into the river. But you did notice that Tamantha stayed in bed, which would have saved her life if not for where the house was built. So how about the brick house? The house in the original story stood up to the strongest winds the wolf could make. But in an earthquake, it suffered more damage than any of the other houses. Even though OCD survived the house falling down around her, one single brick left her with a more unfortunate fate. After seeing all the houses, she realized how important it was to have a strong foundation, even a basement so the ground doesn't shift under her home. More importantly, she learned that wolves and other animals can sense earthquakes coming miles before they strike. So Shaken Bacon took all the information she learned and built a much different house than the others. See how she includes straps to hold the building together? And how all the heavy furniture is attached to the walls? She even has an emergency kit just in case. She knows that during an earthquake at night to stay in bed and to cover up with a pillow. And to keep shoes near or under her bed to protect her feet from broken glass. Shaken Bacon also knows to use a book or another object to hold over her head to keep from getting hit by falling debris. Several weeks passed and Shaken Bacon was at home reading a book. This time, the wolf was prepared. Meanwhile, at Shaken Bacon's house, her dog ran right out of the house. She had seen the wolf jump just before an earthquake and knew a quake might be coming. She immediately dropped, took cover, and held on. The house shook violently, but to her amazement, the house withstood the powerful quake, and all that were damaged were a few pictures that fell off the wall. When the earthquake was over and as she exited the house, she held the book she was reading over her head to protect herself. Wolfie, can you untie the house, please? Oh, they made it. So here's what we learned from our story. During an earthquake, you should drop, cover, and hold on. After an earthquake, you should find something you can use to cover your head and safely exit the building. If you're outside, get on the ground and cover your head. We also learned that we should attach large furniture and appliances to the walls and have an earthquake kit. So following the last big earthquake, Shake and Bacon fixed up her house and lived happily ever after. I hope you guys enjoyed the real story of the 3 little pigs, but my granny, you saw her. I gotta get back there and make sure she's okay.
Granddaughter!
Granny!
I thought I smelled or heard you.
You're walking really well. What are you doing out of bed?
Oh, well, it's the new medication. It's working very well.
Wow, well, I'll go ahead and I'll meet you at the house.
Oh, sounds good.
Bye, guys.
Well, as you guys could see, I wasn't really a bad guy. I was just taking advantage of the situation.
Did you guys enjoy our story? Yes? Was it better than that fake story of the 3 little pigs? And you guys know that the wolf is a good guy, right? No? No, come here, watch. Sit. See? All right, now play dead. Good boy. Now roll over. All right, sit up. Beg. See, he's a good boy. Nothing to worry about.
Treat.
Oh, all I have is a cough drop. There you go. All right, so, well, I hope you guys had fun, and we had fun telling you the story. So thank you. Bye. Bye.